welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like this is such a long time coming.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm like fangirling because obviously I listened to this show and now being on here is such a full circle moment. So thank you.
It really is. And we got to meet at DL Sharon's Emancipation Experience in Washington, D.C. And I felt like I was hugging una hermana because, we've been in each other's orbits for such a long time virtually. So it was great to meet you. And you are a freaking mujerón. This woman is an Amazonian goddess. I swear to God, when you see her in person, you're just like, holy shit. Beautiful, curvaceous, the definition of a mujerón, and not just physically, but like all the things you're doing in business. You are such a badass, and I can't wait to dive into all of this. But let's start off with an introduction. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, so I'm Sonia Alejandra Saunders. I say I'm forever Rivera because that's my parents are Mexican immigrants, but I married an African American man. But I am the founder of Mujerón Movement. It's a Latina community helping women, getting them connected with other Latina entrepreneurs, professionals. And one of the things that I love to do within this community is help you step into your power. And we do that through community, through gaining clarity of like what your purpose is, and of course, through gaining the confidence to show up as the leader that you are on social media, in person. So, all around, building your brand, your personal brand that is full of purpose.
I love that. Now, you're like an actual beauty queen, right? Like you competed in pageants, and I think you're the first person that I know that actually does this. So I can say, like, I know a beauty queen. Take us back to that time. What motivated you to want to be involved with that?
Yes, so when I came out of high school, my big dream was to be on camera. I wanted to be a reporter. And of course, coming from a house that was all Mexican tradition, my parents don't even speak English. And I just wanted to represent like that within the media. So, of course, Univision, Telemundo, those were the areas where I saw myself. And around that time when I was 19, Nuestra Belleza Latina was big and popular. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was like a beauty pageant slash reality TV show. And if you won this pageant, then you got a big contract with Univision, which is one of the largest Hispanic networks here in the US. So I decided to go because I was like, I can do this. And that was like the first time I was ever kind of told, you can't. Like, Sonia, if you want to be successful in this industry, you got to lose weight. And at 19, that was so hard. I was in shape than I am now. I'm now a mom, but back then it was just so hard to hear these words and like be in the space that you dreamt about and you wanted to be in. And then they said, ¿Sabes qué? Te van a comer viva en Miami. Those were the words that a producer used. And as the go-getter that I was like, whatever you need me to do, I'm going to do it. So I went through all the filters that you go through when you audition for a TV show. And they gave me the pass to go to Miami. So for the next month, I just committed to losing weight. And back then, my brother was a professional boxer. So I moved in with him. And like, that's exactly what I did, just his routine. So I get to Miami and imposter syndrome starts to creep in. It's like the first time that I start to really experience self doubt and all of the things that come with it because someone had told me that I was not good enough. And I think that's kind of where self development comes into my life because looking back, I realized that because I never did that work, then I was allowing whatever people were saying about me to be true to me instead of really stepping into who I knew I was. And regardless of how I looked, I knew I had talent. I knew I had the drive. I knew I had, the hunger of becoming the Nuestra Belleza Latina. So while I was participating in this contest, there were little comments and things said, but there was one specific that I remember that really stuck with me. And it was this girl saying, no van a escoger a un mujerón. They're not going to pick a mujerón. And I knew she was describing me because obviously like curvy girl coming into, where pageants are sticks, you know what I mean? And it was like that word mujerón really stuck with me after that. So I got eliminated 7 years after I went back home, right? I worked in these 7 years. I worked on myself. I knew that one thing people can't take away from you is your preparation. Your beauty, they can take it away. All of that, at some point, we lose it. But who we are and what we know, our knowledge, that no one can take it away. So I went back home, got my degree in communications, and I started knocking on doors, landed a TV gig in Phoenix, where I grew up. And that's kind of how my journey started back into TV. One day to the next, they come in, they say, Sonia, this is your last day. We're closing down the station. And I was back in this place of like, oh shit, what am I going to do next? And around that time, Nuestra Belleza Latina comes back. But this time, with all the women's movements, they're like, okay, we're opening it up to las gorditas, las viejitas, like everybody, no matter how you look, you're welcome. So I was like, okay, this is it. I prepared myself. I've created that thick skin, but I also know how to navigate the TV industry. So here I go. I created a shirt that said Mujerón because I wanted to represent the Sonia that at 19 felt that imposter syndrome, felt that self doubt, and wasn't sure if she could take up space. But this time I'm like, aquí vamos, soy un mujerón, and I'm going to show you guys what really matters. And I wanted to also represent all of the women, right, that at some point have been told you can't. We've all have a mujerón story. We've all at some point felt unworthy of our dreams. And it was sort of like that inspiration that really pushed me to go after this dream again. It was a full circle moment for me. I was able to kind of close that cycle because I feel like for a long time I questioned myself. And I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but you're in this space and you're always wondering, what if I would have done this? What if I would have changed something? So I go back, and that's where Mujerón Movement was essentially born. After this time competing, I knew that this t-shirt meant a lot more. So when I go back home, I just wanted to start connecting with Latinas and hear their Mujerón story. And slowly it started becoming a community. We have an annual event now, a podcast, and our coaching program, Mujerón University, where we help women really step into their power and launch their online brands.
I have chills just listening to this story because I think we all have that moment when that seed of self doubt is planted, and it's usually by somebody else. And then we sometimes adopt that as our truth. And so the fact that you were able to say, well, good for you, that's your opinion, but to hell with that shit. Like, that's not what I'm going to believe about myself. What do you think it is about you that allows you to see past the limitations that others have for you, right? Because it's not easy for anybody to do.
I really think that a lot of it comes from watching my parents come from nothing and like come from another country without knowing the language and knowing anything. My father has built a multi-million dollar business importing Mexican corn, and growing in that, I just felt like nothing is impossible. I knew I had this big dream, and now I understand that our dreams sometimes will manifest in a different way than what we thought they would. But I think ultimately my goal was always to impact and help and really inspire others. And I feel like through this movement, I'm able to do that. So I think if I could really point back, it probably would be my parents.
I love that. I think our parents don't realize how much influence they have over us. And sometimes we don't even realize how much influence they have until we really start reflecting and be like, what are the things that I saw? What are the challenges I saw them overcome that have really like become part of my DNA? I also love the fact that you created this whole ass brand around what was meant to be an insult, which I think is brilliant, right? Because when I think of the word mujerón, I'm just like, yo, she's larger than life in all the ways. She walks into a room and you're just like, I can't ignore her. Like, I need to know who she is. She's powerful. She has an essence. You want to be her friend, or you want to be her, or you're secretly a hater. Like, there's all these things that you would react when you hear that word. So let's talk about personal branding, because I think it's something that you've done really well. I don't know if many people understand like the true value of how you actually can monetize and build a whole business around a personal brand. So kind of take us back to the beginnings when you're thinking about the form in which this community is going to take, and like what your mission statement and all that stuff is going to be. What were you thinking about in those days?
Yeah, I think one thing I had clear is that in order for people to connect with this word, they had to know where it came from. They had to know how it impacted my life, and they needed to know the story behind it. So I literally honed in on that. And I continue to look for ways to storytell of things that have happened since then, even through my journey of building this. Now there's other stories that I can continue to share. And one of the things for me is realizing that being vulnerable is actually being confident. I think a lot of times we mistake vulnerability for weakness, and she's victimizing herself and all the things. But I think that when we're able to use it in a way that inspires and that shows what comes after, we're able to really paint a picture of like, wow, if I'm able, for example, to be a part of this community, that can be a reality for me too. So I think the story behind your why and the story behind your brand, having that very clear is really important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And one of the questions that I get so often as a business coach is like, what comes first? Is it the thing that I'm going to sell, or is it the people I'm going to sell it to? And I think you can argue both ways that could potentially work, because there are examples of kind of both strategies where you focus on the product, then you find the people, or you find the people and then create a product for them. But I have found that more often than not, when you think about a successful business, they have taken the people that they want to potentially turn into clients along the way. They've seen the journey, they are invested emotionally, they feel like they are a part of what you're building. And I think that is a very powerful way to build a business, because you have a built in set of loyalists, right? That are like not just folks who happen to run into you on social media or wherever, but they've followed the journey. And I've had so many of those conversations throughout the book tour, and meeting people. And they're just like, I've been listening to the show since like 2019. And I'm like, holy shit, that's crazy. But they've followed. And when you see the evolution of the brand, AKA the creator behind the brand, you get to see in real time like what making those changes, what different decisions look like, what the impact is. And I think it just has a way more powerful way of connecting with people. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to sit here and say I strategically did that, but I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. I love to share it now, right? Because when I look back, I'm like, wow, this is why when we launched a program, we had people signing up versus, crickets. And I feel like this idea of, yes, creating a community first. And I think there's a difference between like a brand and a movement. I think there's ways that you can create, they can coexist. But I think when we build a movement, is really focusing on what set of ideas does your audience believe in and stand for that your movement supports, and how do you help them embody this. And I feel like that's what's really set this movement apart from it not even meaning anything, I feel like, because now there's this word mujerón, and what does it mean to be a mujerón? And if we embody that and step into it, being a part of this community helps you create that reality.
Yeah, and I think what's so powerful too about the community aspect is like being able to see yourself in community, just because so often we find ourselves in situations in life where we might be the only one, and you feel like nobody else gets why you're feeling like this, or this experience that you're having is unique to you because of just who you are or where you come from. And so I find that there's this really powerful, almost like family connection thing that happens in community, especially when it's like very obvious for who the communities are for. Now, devil's advocate, because I have gotten this question with my own brand, are we allowed to participate in these communities that were not necessarily built for us, right? I've gotten that question from men, from white women, from people who don't identify as Latinas. What do you say to folks that may think like it's almost, it can feel exclusionary if we're creating communities and brands that are very specifically niched?
Yes, no, and I trust me, especially with the Hispanic community, like Spanish only speaking folks, I feel like I've had some, is this a feminist movement? And I think for me, like I never come here and say this is just women without men, and like it's not a movement in that way. I've always talked about how my husband has supported my journey in many ways. But I think as long as you feel called to support right? And you feel like these conversations and issues are something that you want to help solve and elevate, you can 100% be a part of it. Last year, we had an amiga that was not Latina join us. She was minority, but I feel like even then, right, the conversations were very similar as far as like immigrant parents and like what we had to deal with. So I've definitely had even white women support me through my journey because they understand, like, hey, maybe these women don't feel comfortable to walk into my room and my community, but they will feel supported by you because you understand them. So I think ultimately it's like this word of being an ally, right? This idea of being an ally and how we can support each other. And I've had many men sponsor our events, and they stand for Latinas and want to see Latinas win. And we can go down an entire list of reasons why Latinas need a space like this.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt how powerful community can be, especially when you decide to become part of one. You just realize, oh wow, like I'm not crazy. These feelings that I've been having, other people have them. These thoughts, these ideas. So it's really validating, I think, for a lot of people. Now let's kind of go backwards and talk about, like, in your definition, what is a brand and how is it different from a business?
Yeah, I think I like to really talk about this even with I help my family business as well. And I like to compare the two because obviously, brands also sell something and can be compensated monetarily, but I think a brand is something that tells you a little bit more about the story and shares a little bit more about what it stands for and how you can create and how you can interact with that brand. So I feel like for me, it's not just someone selling you something, it's someone also making you feel like you're a part of something.
I love that distinction. When you think about even like a Nike commercial, like Nike always makes me feel like I can run a fucking marathon as long as I buy their shoes. There's just like this thing that happens. Like, I'm an athlete if I'm wearing Nike clothing. I might not actually be one, but there's nobody that can tell me otherwise just because they've done such a good job of like making that emotional connection. And so, what do you think has been your key to success in having folks kind of see themselves represented in your brand? Like, what makes people gravitate towards you guys? What do you think?
I think for me, definitely going back to that vulnerability. And I love that about you too. Like, we've been through your relationships and like seeing all of that. And, we're celebrating you. And I think that really helps. Now, I understand that not everybody attaches their image to their brand, but even in that way, how can you take us through that journey, right? That brand evolution. Like, what have you guys done? What do you guys stand for? What do you guys support? What are your values? What is your mission? What is something that really allows us to see deeper than what your product is? So I think ultimately that vulnerability and that connection, really allowing your audience to feel like they see themselves in you and you see yourself in them, really is something that makes it different.
Yeah, I love that. Can you tell us about an example where you shared something that got a reaction that you didn't even anticipate?
Yeah, I think motherhood for sure.
It's a very triggering topic for a lot of people.
Yes. And I have a story where 2 years before I got pregnant, I was told that it was going to be very hard for me to have a child. So even sharing that and opening up about my endometriosis journey and how maybe motherhood would not be an option for me, and then having the opportunity to become a mom, but also like, shit, this is hard. Like, I wanted this so bad, but dang, no one told me how hard it was. And I feel like being okay to just say how it is, and maybe people will judge you and maybe they won't, but I think at the end of the day, who's meant to connect with your message will get it and they will feel seen. And that's when you start to get those messages, which I'm sure you get them all the time, like, thank you for sharing, I was in the same place, or I feel so seen. And I think ultimately that's what allows me to continue to just open up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because I think the vulnerability and like the sharing of maybe the not so picture perfect parts of our lives is actually what helps people connect and helps people realize, like, oh, these are whole ass human beings too. They're not just like highlight reels and wins and accomplishments on social media. Like, these are folks that are going through it just like everybody else. And I think that humanization of yourself as a creator is a really important way to connect with people, especially because the world of social media and digital spaces can feel so curated and perfect and almost like you're living in two different dimensions. So I think those are really strategic opportunities for you to break that wall and really create that true connection. Now I'm wondering for you, because obviously you share a lot about your journey as a business owner, as a mom. How do you define where to draw that line, where those boundaries should exist so that you don't feel almost like you have to share everything with people?
Yes, and I love this question because by no means am I saying like put all your stuff out
Yeah.
there.
You deserve to have a private life
Yeah,
too, mi gente.
right. And I think you decide what that is, only you know. But I think one thing that really helped me, and I remember early on in my journey, someone mentioned this to me, is you don't feel obligated to share every single obstacle or every single battle, especially if you haven't overcome it yet. I think that's a big one for me because sometimes it's a fine line between like sharing and being vulnerable for validation versus, sharing and being vulnerable to show like, hey, you're not alone. And I went through that and look at where I'm at now. So I think if one thing you can take away is like maybe not sharing something that you haven't overcome yet, that I would probably share it more with your inner circle before, you go public with it, especially if you're very public about your life. But I think that was a really good drawing point for me where I could say, okay, that's something that I'm still working on. And it's okay if I don't want to share that yet.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about how your business has evolved, right? Because a lot of the reasons why we start these companies are, I mean, I didn't even know I was creating a brand when I started Yo Quiero Dinero. I was just like, I just want to talk to people on the internet and like tell them what I'm learning about money. And then all of a sudden, like people are like, hey, can we pay you to talk about this shit and whatever. So did you have a plan to like turn this into a business when it started?
No, absolutely not. And I think one of the hardest things for me was stepping from like hosting events to now teaching people about brands and like stepping into being a coach. Like that was such, I can curse in here, right?
Yes,
I'm
of
sure I
course.
have already.
It's a safe space.
That was such a mind fuck for me. Like to go from, hey, I host these cute little events to, okay, now I want to guide you through this program. It took me so much, and I hired, a lot of coaches to help me through that because a lot of it is mindset and identity shifts that you have to step into. So for me, absolutely not. I had no idea what it was going to become, but I think there came a point where I was like, okay, is this a hobby? Is this a nonprofit? Like, am I going to monetize this? And I feel like when I finally launched my program and saw that this could be something that I monetized is when I really went all in.
Yeah. We oftentimes don't even realize we're creating businesses when we do this stuff. And so, part of, I think, what is really valuable about having a community in that scenario is like you can literally ask them, what do you guys want? Instead of like trying to figure out what to build and then find the people to build it for, you already have these people who are in your community. And so, asking them, why are you here? What attracted you to our messaging? What support do you need? What events would you like to see? It's like you do not need to be reinventing the wheel because your people can be the direction that you need in order to steer the business. So talk to your people. They're there for a reason.
Yes, I love that because it's so true. Like sometimes you literally just have to ask.
Yeah. How do you communicate with your community? Like what different aspects do you use?
So for sure through the podcast, like that's probably the biggest way where I can open up and like make those questions. Obviously through the actual program, really listening. Like in the last two cohorts, we've gone from like heavy self-development to like they want help with content now. And like I'm like, okay, well, how can we now shift a little bit into really honing in on building a brand and not just finding what your purpose is? We've extended the program to 12 months so that we can step into what is that for you, and if you already have a business, how can you even go deeper into purpose. And then now, how do you scale it or launch it? And I feel like that for me was a big, another, area where I had to say, okay, well, is that something that I can support them with? And really, I think a lot of times, whatever it is that people are called to you, like you already have it in you, but it takes you to really make the decision. Okay, I can help them with that, or I want to take that step.
Yeah, it's true. And even if you find that there is a topic that maybe you're just not a subject matter expert in, I think this next thing that we'll talk about is very strategic and can help you still get to the goal of serving your people, which is your network. You do not have to be the expert in all the things. But I know when I'm creating a group coaching program or some sort of offer where I have deficiencies, I know there are people I can call up that can do a guest speaking masterclass or can have a conversation on the podcast and can like help round out how I serve my clients. So I'd love to know how networking has impacted your business.
Yes, big time. And I feel like that's why this is such a full circle moment, because the first time I launched my program, you were one of our guest coaches.
That was a lot of fun.
And I remember just sending you a DM like, hey, would you be willing to be a guest coach? And absolutely. Like, I think that that allowed me to feel like, okay, now I really can, sell this because I have. So if you're in that space, absolutely support, like lean on your support, lean on your network, because if it's going to help you just take action, I feel like that's one of the things that I tell a lot of the ladies that are in the program. Whatever's going to help you stay consistent and take action, like do it, because that ultimately is what we want you to do, is like move forward and not stay stuck.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay, so you're building a business that I'm going to guess you didn't have any examples in your immediate family of what that actually looks like. How do you find support so that you don't feel isolated in this journey?
I want to tell you a little backstory before I get into it, because I feel like I never realized how privileged and like how different my business was. I kind of mentioned my parents built a business, but I saw them hustle. Like I saw them work day in, day out, like all of the hours. And my dad has an actual business in person where you go in and like you get your stuff and you check out. And I remember the first time that I was like closing clients on the go. I was on a business trip for his business in Mexico. I jump on a Zoom call and I'm talking to her and she's like, okay, yeah, I'm in. And my dad was like, wow, you guys can literally make money from anywhere now. Like he was so just mind blown. Like that's insane. And I feel like the one thing that I find support in is investing in myself, masterminds or other coaching programs, just attending master classes, whatever it is. But investing in myself has been the only reason why I haven't quit. And I feel like there's a certain level of a commitment when you put money for yourself and like you're committed to growing this and making that money and some. And it's going to take a while, right? You're not going to have all the answers right away. But I think for me, it has definitely been community and investing in myself.
Yeah, I think I can't agree with you more. You have to have skin in the game, I think, to even take your dreams seriously. And I think oftentimes it's still very much a novel concept for us as Latinas to like spend money on self improvement. I think we're totally comfortable spending money on external shit, whether that's like upgrading the car, getting the nice new Chanel bag, getting the lashes, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we don't ask questions about that.
No, it's like, anything that makes you look the part. I think we're very comfortable with that. But do you actually feel good? Are you actually proud of what you're doing? Do you love your career? Do you wake up every day excited? Is your business just doing enough or is it doing what you need it to do? Like, these are all questions that I don't think we ask ourselves enough. Are we committed enough to our health? Are we outsourcing activities in our lives that are draining our souls? Just being okay with like investing money in non-tangible things, in making your life better, in improving your mindset, in getting you closer to a goal. I think that for me is the definition of a mujerón. She's not about to settle for the bullshit. she's going to be excelling in every aspect of her life. And I'd love to know from you, like, what is a mujerón to you?
Yes, I would love to copy and paste. Because it's definitely someone that's it doesn't mean she's not afraid. It just means that she leverages that fear.
She does it anyway.
Yeah, to push her to take action. And I think for me, one of the biggest characteristics is you don't have to downplay other people, or you don't have to talk bad about other people to step into your own power. It's like, how do you even help them find their own light, right? And shine their own light. So I feel like for me, it's definitely someone that goes all in on her goals, like steps into who she's meant to be, works, like you said, on all areas of her life, her health, her relationships, and isn't afraid to do the dirty part, like the ugly part, because every single part of our lives takes work, relationships, motherhood, our business, our family, right? There's always going to be something that we can really step into. But I think doing it with this courage and knowing that you're not going to settle for less and uplifting others through your journey.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so tell us about your upcoming event. This is an annual event that you have been hosting. So tell us, first off, what is it? Where is it? When is it? And what can people expect?
Yes, it's October 5th in Chicago. And one of the things that this time sets it apart is we got a title sponsorship through Capital One. So we're having it at their Capital One Cafe. And I just feel so proud to be able to pitch, this little brand, this little idea to a big corporation. And now they're investing big time on all of the event, and it's just seeing like also how we're going to leverage that relationship, right? To help us in any way that they can. I'm already working on that, but it's October 5th in Chicago, and we have an incredible lineup of speakers. So check it out, mujeron.com. You can find it under the events tab, and it's a full day. We have our mastermind day the next day. If you already have a business and you want to like dive deeper into, there's that option as well. But it's just a day of community, empowerment, purpose, and really stepping into the mujeron of your dreams.
I love it. And we're going to have the link for all of the resources that Sonia shares on the show in the episode description. So if you want to find out more about the event, the speakers, how to get your ticket, please do, y'all, because, as someone who has also hosted live events, there's a lot of power that comes from being in community in real person. Like, I've seen actual transformation happen in these spaces, and we have to vote with our dollars. Like, if you want to see more of these events, if you want to feel like community is accessible, you need to support these events. So please do, because obviously you working with a sponsor, they want to see that there is a longevity in this potential relationship. They want to see that like you're excited to be here to support these types of events. So I cannot stress enough, like, make it happen, because it was not long ago that it was almost impossible to find anything that was catering towards us as Latinas, as entrepreneurs, as business owners. We need these spaces more than at any time in the world. And so, Sonia, I'm really excited because I know that this is just the beginning for you and the Mujerón movement. So, like, what do you envision? What's that 5-year, 10-year plan look like? What is the ultimate goal?
I will tell you my craziest goal. And it kind of ties in my love for the media and obviously inspiring and uplifting Latinas. I would love to land like some kind of show, either on Netflix or something, where we go around the world and just see what badass Latinas are doing around the world. Like, that would be my ultimate
Sign
dream.
me up, please, as a co-host, because holy shit, that sounds incredible.
Yes. That would be my ultimate goal. But, just continue to uplift and create these spaces. I feel like for me, just continuing to grow this event and women that really want to go deeper within the coaching program, working one on one with them is so fulfilling as well. So, but if we're talking about crazy goals, it's that first one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you already have the experience of what it's like to be in that world. So I feel like that's going to allow you to really create a space that maybe was like the complete opposite of the, I guess, the isolationist nature of things, right? Just feel the elitism, if you will. We don't need any more of that shit. We need actual community that is here for everybody. And so if you can be a part of that, I would be so excited. We're going to manifest that. We're putting it out into the universe. Sonia, tell us where we can find you and the Mujerón movement on social media and on the interwebs.
Yes, so you can find us at Mujerón Movement anywhere and the Sonia Alejandra as well for my personal page. And then you can find the podcast, Mujerón Podcast, on Apple and Spotify. And visit mujeron.com. You'll find more about what we're up to. Send us a DM, email me, sonia@mujeron.com. Whatever it is, however I can support you, I would love to share any knowledge that I have to help any Latina that is working on their dream as well.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for showing up as an incredible mujerón and an incredible inspiration to us all.
Thank you. And thank you for inspiring me so much.